At that time, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, truly global cataclysmic events involving rapid rises in sea level.
Tales. God floods the earth, sparing Noah, his family, and two of every animal on board his ark.
In May 2025, researchers from Istanbul University and Noah's Ark scans released data from the Durupinar formation in Turkey that even skeptics could not immediately explain. What the research team found 8 to 20 feet beneath the surface of that ancient Turkish mountain didn't just defy easy explanation. It threatened to rewrite one of the oldest questions in human history. In the mountains of eastern Turkey, near the Iranian border, a joint team of American and Turkish scientists has been quietly conducting what may be the most consequential archaeological investigation of the 21st century. Using instruments that peer through solid earth like an X-ray through skin, they detected something that natural geology simply cannot produce. Right angles, corridors, layered chambers, the unmistakable signature of intentional design. Buried beneath thousands of years of volcanic mud, at a site that measures precisely 515 feet from bow to stern. That number is not a coincidence. It is exactly what the Book of Genesis describes as the length of Noah's Ark. And when the Turkish government received the full report of what had been found, access to the site was restricted within 24 hours. No official press conference, no announcement, just silence and a locked gate in the mountains of Ararat. What follows is the full story of what was found, why it matters, and why someone in Ankara decided the world was not ready to see it. The mountain range that guards the far eastern edge of Turkey is not an easy place to reach. The nearest city of any size is Doğu Bayazıt, a dusty, wind-scoured town perched at the foot of Greater Mount Ararat, the snow-capped volcano that dominates the skyline like a sleeping giant. This is the frontier, just 3 kilometers from the Iranian border. Military checkpoints punctuate the roads. The winters are brutal, the summers brief. Most of the world has never heard of this place, but for a small, obsessive community of researchers, it is the most important address on Earth. The formation they have come to study is called the Durupinar site, named after Turkish Army Captain İlhan Durupinar, who first photographed it from the air in October 1959 while on a NATO mapping mission. Looking down from his reconnaissance aircraft, Durupinar saw something in the mudflow that made him write a report he would spend decades trying to get taken seriously. The unmistakable outline of a ship. Not a small one. A vessel nearly twice the length of an American football field, buried in a river of ancient volcanic rock. The formation sits on the southern flank of Mount Tenderek, 18 miles south of Ararat's summit. It had first been physically exposed in May 1948, when 3 earthquakes and a season of punishing rainfall stripped back the mud that had concealed it for thousands of years. A Kurdish shepherd named Rashid Sarahan reportedly became the first modern human to stand on it. He looked at the raised, hull-like outline beneath his feet and told people it was a ship. Nobody believed him. For 11 years, nobody paid much attention. Then, Durupinar's photograph changed everything. The dimensions were the first thing researchers seized on. According to Genesis 6, God instructed Noah to build an ark 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Scholars have debated which cubit was intended ever since. But Andrew Jones, the California-born independent researcher who has spent the last 3 decades of his life investigating this site, eventually moving to Turkey so he could work year-round, has made a specific and verifiable argument. Moses, the traditionally attributed author of Genesis, was raised as a prince of Egypt. He was educated in the Egyptian system, and the standard unit of measurement in that system was the Royal Egyptian Cubit, standardized rods of which can still be found in the Cairo Museum and the Imhotep Museum at Saqqara. That cubit measures approximately 20.62 American inches. Multiply by 300, and you get 515 feet, or 157 meters. The Durupinar formation measures 515 feet in length. Precisely. That alone would have been enough to raise eyebrows. But the team was just getting started. The real turning point came in October 2019, in a moment that Jones later described as one of the most nerve-wracking days of his career. He had been trying for years to arrange a full, professional ground-penetrating radar survey of the site, GPR, a technology that uses radar pulses to image what lies beneath the surface of the Earth without disturbing it. Think of it as ultrasound for the ground. The equipment is expensive. The logistics in this remote, politically sensitive corner of Turkey are complex, and the permits required to do anything at the Durupinar site flow through layers of Turkish government bureaucracy that can take years to navigate. But in 2019, everything finally aligned. The team Jones contracted was Oregon-based Topa 3D, a geophysical survey firm with no stake in the Noah's Ark question.
Researchers working in the high mountains of Turkey have uncovered what appear to be hidden tunnels similar to the descriptions of the biblical account of Noah's Ark.
Our next guest says his newly found evidence can prove that Noah's Ark did in fact exist, turning this biblical mystery into a reality. Joining us now from Turkey.
Their operators, Jones has repeatedly emphasized, were largely atheists and agnostics hired to do a technical job. Some of them had never heard of the Durupinar site before they landed in Turkey. They were not looking for an ark. They were collecting data. Imagine standing in the cold mountain air at 6,500 feet above sea level, watching a team of engineers push radar equipment back and forth across a muddy hillside, while a camera crew films the whole thing for the Science Channel's Forbidden History. The instruments emit signals. The signals bounce back. A computer processes the returns into a three-dimensional map of what lies beneath. And then the image appears on the screen. Jones saw it first. Then the lead technician leaned in. Then nobody said anything for a long moment. The scans showed three distinct horizontal layers within the formation, consistent with what Genesis describes as the Ark's three decks: lower, second, and third. They showed a central corridor running nearly the full length of the structure, a tunnel approximately 43 feet wide cutting through the interior. They showed angular shapes, right angles, at depths ranging from 8 to 20 feet below the surface. Rooms, or what appeared to be rooms. These are not random shapes in the mudflow, Jones said in his official statement. The presence of hallways and room-like structures points to a man-made origin for the boat shape. The GPR operators, the neutral ones, the ones with no religious agenda, were, according to multiple accounts, visibly startled. You do not see right angles in natural geological formations, lava folds, mud slumps, rock strata bends. Nature curves. It does not build 90-degree corners. If you're finding this as extraordinary as we do, a like on this video genuinely helps this channel keep investigating stories like this one. The data was clear. The implications were anything but. The radar scans were remarkable, but they were also 4 years old by the time the wider world paid attention. The reason the story broke wide open in the spring of 2025 was something more tangible: soil. In September 2024, the Noah's Ark scans team brought in William Crabtree, a professional soil scientist and agronomist. His job was straightforward: take samples from inside the formation and compare them against samples from the surrounding volcanic mudflow. If the Durupinar structure is simply part of the same geological deposit that surrounds it, as skeptics have always argued, the soil chemistry should be essentially identical throughout. It was not. The samples collected from within the formation, analyzed in December 2024, showed organic matter levels nearly 3 times higher than those found in the surrounding soil. They also showed significantly elevated potassium levels. If you know soil science, you will understand that potassium levels, organic matter, and pH can all be influenced by decaying organic material, Crabtree stated publicly. His conclusion was unambiguous. The soil composition is markedly different from the natural mudflow, indicating something extraordinary at this site. To understand why this matters, we need to think carefully about what ancient decomposed wood does to the earth around it. Wood is a carbon-rich organic material. When wood rots over centuries and millennia, it releases carbon into the surrounding soil, dramatically raising organic matter content. The potassium inside wood cells also leaches outward as the structure breaks down. If you had an enormous wooden vessel, say 515 feet of ancient timber, sitting buried in a mudflow for 4,000 years, you would expect to find exactly this kind of chemical signature in the earth around its remains. Not the wood itself necessarily, but its ghost, its chemical imprint. Crabtree and Jones have been explicit. They are not claiming they found the wood. They are claiming the soil is behaving exactly as it should if wood were once there and has since decomposed. This is a critical distinction that skeptics sometimes obscure. The absence of visible timber is not evidence against the hypothesis. It is exactly what preservation science predicts. There was one other observation from the site that passed largely without comment in the mainstream coverage, but which the researchers flagged as quietly significant. The vegetation growing on top of the formation is measurably different in color from the vegetation immediately surrounding it. Jones noted that the plants above the structure display a distinct hue visible even on satellite imagery. In soil science, differential plant growth and color are classic surface indicators of subsurface anomalies. Farmers use it to locate buried features. Archaeologists use it to identify buried walls. The formation is broadcasting its difference, even from space. This is the detail that keeps researchers up at night. The Durupinar site is not technically a secret. It has a visitor center. Turkish tourists come on weekends. You can pay 100 Turkish lira to stand at the fence and look at it. The Turkish Ministry of Culture has designated it a protected national heritage site, which sounds like an honor until you understand the operational consequence. No excavation, no drilling, no destructive testing of any kind without explicit government approval, which has never been granted. In 2011, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey took the unusual step of transferring jurisdiction over all Noah's Ark research work at the site from the National Ministry of Culture to a 5-professor Cultural Center Board of Directors at Agra Ibrahim Chechen University. It was a reshuffling of bureaucratic control that left many researchers puzzled. Why create a dedicated oversight structure for a site the government officially regards as a geological oddity? The answer, Jones and others have suggested, is that the Turkish state is playing a careful game. The site sits 3 kilometers from the Iranian border. Military installations are nearby. Access by foreign researchers requires multiple layers of approval. Any announcement of a significant find at this location would trigger geopolitical, religious, and diplomatic consequences that Ankara is in no hurry to navigate. And then there is the more uncomfortable question. What if they already know more than they have said publicly? In 2019, the same year as the GPR survey, Turkish and American researchers met with Turkish scientists and officials on site at the formation. This was not a casual meeting. Government-affiliated scientists were present. The GPR data was shared with Turkish university partners. The findings were, by all accounts, received with serious attention. Shortly after the results of that survey were formally compiled and submitted through official channels, the restrictions on access tightened. Permits became harder to obtain. Requests for core drilling, the next logical step that would allow researchers to pull physical samples from depth, have been delayed, reviewed, and re-reviewed without resolution. When Jones was asked directly about the government's response to the 2019 and 2024 data, his answer was careful. All work must be done in partnership with the Turkish authorities, he said. This is a politically sensitive and dangerous area. He left the rest unsaid. Some scholars argue that the entire Durupinar hypothesis rests on motivated reasoning, that researchers arrive at the site already convinced they have found the Ark and interpret every ambiguous data point in that direction. This is not an unfair critique. It deserves a serious answer. The most rigorous skeptical case was made in 1996 by geologist Lawrence Collins, who co-authored a paper in the Journal of Geosciences Education with the unambiguous title, Bogus Noah's Ark from Turkey Exposed as a Common Geologic Structure. Collins argued that the boat-shaped outline is a naturally occurring geological feature, a doubly plunging syncline where layers of rock fold symmetrically in a way that can produce elongated, vessel-like shapes. The supposed iron brackets some earlier researchers detected were, Collins argued, weathered volcanic minerals. The supposed fossilized wood was metamorphosed peridotite. It was a thorough takedown, and it effectively ended serious academic interest in the site for nearly 2 decades. One controversial theory suggests the current research team's problem is the inverse of the one Collins identified. They are not interpreting rock as wood, they are interpreting the absence of rock-typical behavior as evidence of something else. The anomalous soil chemistry, the right-angle geometry, the layered subsurface structure, each of these could have an explanation that doesn't require Noah. An ancient landslide can produce angular features. Differential soil chemistry can result from differential mineral content in the underlying strata. Even the 3-layer profile could be explained by natural deposition events. And yet, the geophysicists from Topa 3D, who went to Turkey as neutrals, came back changed. One of the senior engineers reportedly told the film crew, without prompting, that the parallel lines and right angles they had recorded were, in his professional experience, not what you would expect from a natural feature. He was not making a theological claim. He was making a technical one. Dr. Fethi Ahmet Yüksel, a professor in the Department of Geophysical Engineering at Istanbul University, a mainstream Turkish academic institution with no overt religious agenda, reviewed the data and concluded that the subsurface anomalies were consistent with a large, constructed object. His institution has continued to partner with the research team. When 2 credentialed geophysicists on opposite ends of the religious spectrum look at the same data and reach similar conclusions, the skeptical case requires more than a dismissal. Here is what we know, stripped of everything uncertain. A boat-shaped formation measuring exactly 515 feet in length sits in the mountains of ancient Ararat, in the precise region where the biblical text places the ark's resting point. The formation's interior contains subsurface geometry, right angles, corridors, layered horizontal structures, that is, by the testimony of neutral professional surveyors, inconsistent with natural geological processes. The soil inside the formation contains 3 times the organic matter of the surrounding terrain, with elevated potassium levels consistent with ancient wood decomposition. The Turkish government, which controls access to the site, has placed it under national protection and has not approved excavation. One possible interpretation of those facts is boring, a geological curiosity, misidentified by hopeful believers, protected by a cautious government simply following standard heritage protocols. Another interpretation is not boring at all. If the structures detected by the GPR represent the decayed remains of an actual vessel, even if not the vessel of Genesis, even if a large Bronze Age ship of unknown origin, the implications cascade outward in every direction. It would mean that a flood, catastrophic enough to drive the construction of an enormous ship, actually occurred in this region, at some point in the last 4,000 to 6,000 years. It would mean that ancient oral and written traditions about that flood preserved a genuine memory across millennia. It would mean that the story told in Genesis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king list, and the flood accounts of dozens of other ancient cultures are not myths in the dismissive sense. They are echoes. Some scholars argue that the Black Sea flood hypothesis, proposed by geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman in their 1997 study, provides exactly this context. Ryan and Pittman presented evidence that around 5,600 BC, rising Mediterranean waters breached a natural dam and catastrophically flooded what had been a freshwater lake basin, the Black Sea, transforming it in a matter of weeks. The flood would have displaced thousands of people across a vast region. If an experienced seafaring family built a large vessel in anticipation of the rising waters and survived, their story would have spread. It would have been told and retold. It would have found its way into the earliest written records of multiple civilizations. If we take the evidence at Durupinar at face value, It raises the question of whether what we are looking at is not the resting place of a mythological object, but the physical remnant of one of the most consequential survival events in human prehistory. There's a quietness to the Durupinar site that visitors consistently remark on. The wind comes down off the Ararat Plateau in long, cold sweeps. The volcanic rock is dark and old. At certain times of day, the shadow of the formation falls across the hillside in a shape that, if you are standing in the right place, looks unmistakably like the hull of a ship. Andrew Jones has watched thousands of sunrises from this mountain. He has given up careers, relationships, and the comfort of a settled life to be here. He does not speak about his work in apocalyptic terms. He is careful, precise. He uses phrases like consistent with and appears to indicate and requires further investigation. He has spent 30 years refusing to make claims he cannot support. But in a 2024 interview, he said something that has stayed with the people who heard it. He said, "We're not looking for a miracle. We're looking for what's already there." The Noah's Ark Scans team has outlined their next steps: additional geophysical surveys, expanded soil sampling at greater depths, and a core drilling program, which would allow physical extraction of material from within the formation, pending Turkish government approval. That approval has not come. The site sits there in the meantime, protected, restricted, watched. Dr. Mustafa Kumral of Istanbul Technical University has participated in surface surveys of the Ararat region. Agra Ibrahim Chechen University, which holds official jurisdiction over the site, has published research and hosted international symposia. The 7th International Mount Ararat and Noah's Ark Symposium, held in Agra in 2023, drew academics and researchers from around the world. The Turkish academic establishment is, quietly, taking this seriously. The rest of the Turkish establishment, the government offices, the ministries, the security apparatus overseeing a militarized border zone, takes it seriously in a different way. What cannot be unseen cannot be unfound. The data exists. The scans exist. The soil chemistry results exist. They have been shared with journalists, academics, and government officials. They have been uploaded to websites and published in press releases and broadcast on cable television. And still, the gate is locked. History has a pattern with discoveries of this scale. The initial reaction is almost always the same: control, containment, delay. The Dead Sea Scrolls were withheld from full academic publication for nearly 50 years after their discovery in 1947. The Nag Hammadi texts, found in Egypt the same year, spent years locked in bureaucratic disputes. The ancient library at Herculaneum, buried by Vesuvius in 79 AD, contains thousands of scrolls that modern scanning technology is now beginning to read for the first time, after 2,000 years. Institutions protect themselves. Governments protect their narratives. Evidence waits. If the structures beneath the Durupinar formation are what the data suggests they might be, the question is not whether the truth will eventually emerge. It is only a question of when. The researchers are planning to return. The permits are in process. The equipment is ready, and the mountain holds its silence. What would it mean, not just for religion, not just for archaeology, but for every human being alive today, to learn that one of the oldest stories ever told was not a myth, but a memory? That somewhere in the volcanic highlands of eastern Turkey, buried under centuries of earth, lies physical proof that our ancestors survived something almost unsurvivable, that they built something extraordinary, that they made it through, and that they remembered. That story, the one about survival and endurance and passing something precious forward through catastrophe, doesn't belong to any one religion or any one tradition. It belongs to all of us. The gate is locked today, but what has been found beneath that mountain cannot stay buried forever.